Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to everybody officially. You give me 1 second, my slides will appear, which will be marvellous, and then we really are good to go. And what's happening with it? Oh, yes, there we go. Fantastic. It's been a very, very busy day. So, hello and welcome officially to the third part of our autumn look at automating Lightroom. Well, actually, it's been a look at Lightroom, and this is part 3. This is automating Lightroom. For those of you who don't know, I'm Elaine Giles. I am a trainer and have been a trainer for a long, long time, and I've got a soft spot for Lightroom. It was the application that turned me on to using a Mac, so I love Lightroom. Now, I am also the Adobe User Group Manager for the Northwest Adobe User Group based in the northwest of the UK. And as I said, this is part of our autumn look at Lightroom. Now, the first session in our dedicated series was to have a complete introduction to it, and there is a recording of that session available if you would like to view it. I know that we have picked people up as we've gone through this process, so there are some of you who have not seen that one, and that's available on YouTube. You can find that at youtube.com/theelainegiles and just search for Lightroom and you'll find all of the videos, including the session that we ran last time where we covered all things Lightroom Mobile related. And if you missed that, as I say, there is that recording of it. It doesn't really affect what we're doing tonight. I am assuming that you've got an idea of how to work with Lightroom, but I will explain everything fully, and the fact that you have or have not used the mobile version is completely irrelevant. Tonight we're going to look at automating Lightroom, and that's not a single process. It's a range of options used to speed up every aspect of your Lightroom workflow. So I'm defining automation as a feature or a process that speeds up your workflow in Lightroom, whatever that process may be. And the first thing that I would say to you is keyboard shortcuts. There are some shortcuts in there that will save you an absolute ton of time, just literally navigating the application and turning features on and off. There are a lot of keyboard shortcuts in there that are toggles. Now, obviously, they're quite difficult to demonstrate just in terms of talking about them. I could tell you what they are and you wouldn't see what they were. I can demonstrate them, but then you won't actually have the keyboard shortcut in front of you. So I'm going to take the approach of demoing it, telling you what the shortcut key is, and then showing you what it actually does. So that's going to be the first thing we have a look at. But keyboard shortcuts are only the beginning. If we go into Lightroom, we're going to check out all the other ways that you can supercharge your workflow. And as I said, it's going to start with keyboard shortcuts, but then move on to lots of other areas. So I have Lightroom here, and if you have been with us for the other sessions, these images will be familiar with you. You will have seen them before. There's lots of ones about Italy, and there's other things as well. So I'm going to start off with those shortcuts, and let me start off with a really simple one. I'm just going to move into the print module. It doesn't matter where I am particularly for this, but I need to go into another module because it's going to take me back to the library module. And that shortcut key is the G key. Now, does anybody who's with us live know what the G key does? There's also the E key. That's the next one we'll be having a look at. But the G key does two things really. It takes you back, the global thing it does is take you back to the grid view. But to do that, it needs to take you back to the library module. So I'm just going to hit the G key, and it took me back to the library module and put me into grid view. So that is the G key. That's really useful. Wherever you are, if you want to get back to your images, the images that you're working with, and see them in a grid, G key. So I'm going to go back to the print module. And this time I'm going to try the other keyboard shortcut that I mentioned, which was the E key. And that again takes you back to the library, but this time it takes you into the loop view. So G and E are two really useful ones to remember. I use those all the time. Now, that actually takes you back to the develop module, to the library module, and it takes you into a specific view. But the other place you'll spend a lot of time is the develop module. And the D key, D for develop, will take you into the develop module. And my machine's struggling already, but it will get there. It will get there. Come on, into the develop module. I've got a beach ball there, but it is getting there. There we go. So that's the D key. Now, once you're in here, you've got a few options that are really helpful, because one of the things I'm hearing, particularly from people who are switching from Aperture to Lightroom, is there's a lot of interface in Lightroom and it's quite intrusive. So you really want to focus on your images. Well, one way to do that is the Tab key. And when you press the Tab key, the sidebars disappear. The left and right sidebars disappear. And hit the Tab key again and it brings them back. So it's only a temporary thing, but it does sort of narrow down the interface a little bit and give you a much better view of what you're actually doing. Now, closely related to that is Shift and Tab. And Shift and Tab does a little bit more. With the Tab key, you can see you lose the sidebars, but you do still have the menu at the top and the thumbnail track at the bottom. But if you use Shift and Tab, all four of those elements disappear. The left sidebar, the right sidebar, you've got the thumbnail track gone and the menu gone. But what you do have is at the top, you have a tiny triangle. You also have that triangle on the right side, the left side, and the bottom. And when you hover over that triangle, so actually hovering over it, not clicking anything, just hovering over it, it brings back the element temporarily. So if you just quickly want to go up there and do something and then have it disappear automatically, you can do that. And that was Shift and Tab. Now, Shift and Tab for a second time brings that back. So that one was Shift and Tab. Now, the next one may or may not work. It does work, but it doesn't seem to work well with multiple monitors. So I've done this session before and it was fine in rehearsals, but when I came to do it live, it didn't work. So if it doesn't work, then that's great, I'll say, because I'll explain what the problem is. Right, the next keyboard shortcut is the L key. So I'm going to hit the L key and it's not working. Well, it is. It's dimming the wrong monitor. What the L key actually does, it's called lights out mode. And it dims the interface. So I'll have to explain what this does. It dims the interface, all the elements apart from the photo. And if I hit the L key for a second time, it makes everything but the photo black. And if I hit it for a third time, it brings you back to the view that you're looking at now. Now, I think it's problematic that there is seriously a problem with it, which is I've got 3 monitors here and the one you're looking at is the central monitor. And what's happening when I use the L key is it's dimming out the left-hand monitor. That is something that Adobe need to fix. But sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. If I moved the monitor that Lightroom was on, it would work. But if I move it to where you can see it, then it's not working. But trust me, it does actually work. So it's a good shortcut key. Okay, so let's move on to something that you do on a regular basis with Lightroom that's really important, which is import images. So up to File and down to Import Photos and Video. And it has a quick think about it and then it brings me this dialog box. Now, you've probably seen this dialog box before. When I teach Lightroom, I have been known to spend 2 hours going through everything in here. Luckily, I don't intend to do that tonight. But there is a lot going on in here. And the point that I make with it is the more that you can do in here, the less you need to do with those images once you've imported them. So let's see all that you can do in here and then the trick to make it much faster next time. So the first thing to do is to select a source for your images. And I have in here, it's happily at the right place, in my data folder on the desktop, in my number 2 folder, I have 3 folders of images there. So I'm just going to click on the first one there. And these are some sample images from quite a long time ago. And these are the images that I want to import. So I just select the folder on the left. In the middle, you get the option to choose the actual images you want to import, to have them as copied as DNGs, to copy them, move them, or add them to your catalogue. Now, I'm just going to leave that set to the default, which is copy. I'm not going to make any changes in the middle bit here. What is much more interesting is all the work that goes on the right-hand side of this dialog box. Now, I've been through this before, so this is probably about right as to how I would have it to import. But taking it from the top, on the file handling, you get an option to specify how you would like to build previews. So you've got minimal previews, which make the import quicker. You can embed and have sidecar files. You can have standard or one-to-one previews. Now I'm going to go for one-to-one previews. I'm not concerned about disk space. and I want to have Lightroom working as fast as it can once I've imported these images. I'm also going to elect to build smart previews, but I don't want it to not import the duplicates if it thinks it's duplicates. I want to control that. I'm also going to make a second copy of anything I import and send that out to my backup location, which at the moment is in my main hard drive, which isn't the best place for it, but for demonstration that's fine. So every time I import, I always set these this way. So I have to go through and do that manually. So that's my file handling sorted out. Then I've got my file renaming. Now, you don't have to rename the files at all, but you can elect to. And the first thing that you can do is you can choose a template. So we're talking about automating Lightroom, things that make your job faster, things that make your whole life easier in it. And having templates to choose from is one of those things. So I could have the date and the file name. I could also put custom texts on it and all kinds of things. I'm going to go for the date and time. So I've set up how I want those files renamed. And then I can specify extra things, which is during the import, do you want to apply a develop setting? So maybe you have a specific setting that you would like applied to all of your images. Well, you can do that there. You can also have metadata applied. And if I just open that up and we have a quick look at it, by default, you have no metadata supplied at all. I have my own preset. So it's actually set to Elaine at the moment, but I'm going to go into none. And then I'm going to show you, if I go back to there and I edit that preset, that brings up this dialog box and the preset is listed at the top. So custom or Elaine, the two that I actually have. And say restore the defaults. So if I do that, what will happen is it will set them back to the default. But what I'm going to do here is make a few changes. So if I go into the Elaine one, you can see I've got my name in there. I've also got the copyright. I can put in as many other elements of metadata as I like, and that scrolls quite extensively. So literally there are hundreds of settings in there for metadata. Now I'm just going to pick one at random. There we go, keywords, and I've got demo in it. And I'm going to leave that set to demo. And so during the import, that data will be added to it. I can also put in extra keywords at the bottom if I want to. I'm going to leave that for the moment. And the last option I've got is the destination. Now, I would like my images to be organised. So I've got them here organised by date. I've specified the date format. And I have a folder that my Lightroom library is in. And I also have a folder that my images are in, and I keep my images in that folder but organised within it. So this one here, I bring up that so we can see it. These are quite old images from 2005. It's picked out the date and it's suggesting that it will, well, it's telling me it will add that folder. That's what the little plus icon means on it. It's going to create that folder and it's going to put those images in there, and that's absolutely fine. So that's taken a few minutes to sort that out. And of course, when you're importing these images, you'd have to check that quite carefully to make sure that you're not putting them with the wrong name in the wrong folder. So it would be fantastic if rather than hitting import, you could save all of those settings that you've just applied to that import. And you can do that. But considering the rest of the interface is so big and bold and in your face, it's strange that the import presets down here is quite innocuous. It's just hidden away down there, and at the moment we're not using an import preset. But if I go into here, I do have some user presets. I've actually got one which is demo import. But what I'm going to do is save the settings that I've just created as a new preset. So in here I'm going to put this as my default import settings. So I know that, and I can't spell, can I? I've got to put a K and it should be an L. There we go. Right. So I will know that those are how I always want my images imported, unless there is a specific reason why not. So I'm going to create that. As soon as I do that, at the bottom here, it's telling me that that is the import preset that I'm actually going to use. So I'm just going to hit import and it will go away and it will import those images. And it'll be fairly quick about it. There's only 5 of them. So even though I've elected for the smart previews and the one-to-one previews as well, it's still going to be quite fast because there's only the 5 of them. It is going to say already built for these. That's absolutely fine. And OK there. And I've got my import. Now, that didn't save any time whatsoever because I did have to go through all of those options. But the next time I go back and my images, so going back and doing the same again, this time I'm going to a second folder. There's my images. And I'm going to make sure at the bottom that it is set to default import settings, and it is. And if I just show you, everything that I specified in here is still there. So the renaming that I selected, the smart previews, the backup images, what to do during the import with the metadata, and even the destination, which was my Lightroom library folder, is there. And it's going to tell me that, again, it's suggesting it's going to make a new folder, this time 2007. And that's fine too. So although I've checked all of that, all I actually had to do was hit import. So I'm going to import those images as well. And then I'm just going to repeat that process once more. But just to show you how much I trust it, once I've done that, I'm not going to check any of the settings. I trust it now. So if I go back to File, Import Photos and Video, and get that up, go down to my 3rd folder of imported images. There we are. And just hit import. Didn't even need to check it. Trusting it now. And in they come as well. So that's it for importing the images. Now, another thing that you can do to help you work with Lightroom and work faster with Lightroom is something quite innocuous, which is just change the view that you use. Because at the moment, there's quite a bit of information about those images, but you might have to toggle that information on and off to see it, or go into specific panels and look for that information. So using this image as an example, I'm just going to right click on there. Right down the bottom, you have this option, which is View Options. So to bring that dialog box up and just show you, this is really actually quite helpful. Let's make sure we can see a few of these images. So these 4 images on the left there. One of the things that I find really useful, speeds my workflow up, is just change the grid settings. So in here you have compact cells and you can have expanded cells. And when you select expanded cells in there, you get extra information in each image. So there's a number, there is the crop pixels, there's my name there, there's the file format. You can also see that it has metadata, and if it was ranked, you would see the star rating there as well. So that has brought in extra information, but it gets better than that. If you use the expanded cells view, you can decide what information is displayed where. So we have the index number, the crop dimensions, the copy name, and the file extension showing. Not only can you alter where they show, but if you go into there, you can choose what is actually shown, and there is a whole range of information that you can show there. So if you're working with a particular piece of metadata that's very important to you, I would suggest you go in there, toggle that on, and it will speed up your workflow. Now that is in the grid view. So I'm going to turn that off there. We don't need those at the moment. But if I go into the loop view options and move that over there, you have a similar option here where you can show an information overlay. So toggling that on, and it's thinking about it. Oh, it's struggling tonight, isn't it? Right, info block 1, which is this information in the top, and info block 2. See what you're getting with info block 1, the file name, the copy name, the capture time and date, and the crop dimensions. You toggle that to info block 2, again while it thinks about it for a second. Are you going to think about it? There we go. This time you have the file name, the copy name, the exposure, ISO, and the lens setting. Not only can you change these, but again, you've got all the same kind of information. So if it's really important that you have another piece of information showing, you can do that. And then instantly, with that overlay turned on and left on, you have access to that information over the top of the image and wander around the interface looking for it. So I will turn those off, but view options, very powerful and very, very useful. Now, we're coming on now, though, to the actual presets. And what we're going to know, actually, do you know what I'll do before I do the presets? Yes, let's have a look at some virtual copies. Right, one of the ways I like to speed up working is to create virtual copies of images. Now, let's say I want to work with this particular image, which is greatly overexposed, but I've got an idea that might work with it. If I want to create a copy of that, it's far better to do it within Lightroom rather than the alternative, which is to go out to the file system and duplicate the image and then have to import it into Lightroom. And then remember that the two files are the same file, they're the same photo. You can create a virtual copy, and it couldn't be easier. Right click on the image and select Create Virtual Copy. And it adds down here, let's have a quick look at that. It now says 1 of 1 for the original. And when you go into the second one, 2 of 2. And then you have the icon, it looks like a piece of paper folded up at the corner. That's telling you that that is a virtual copy. So those images are identical. Now, thing to remember, that is strictly within Lightroom. It does not exist anywhere else. Don't go looking for that second copy on your file system. You won't find it. It exists only within Lightroom. If you want to make changes to this and then export that image, so be able to give it to somebody else, you can do that, but you would have to export it. So now you've got this copy to be working on, you can do anything that you like with that image and it not affect the real image, the original. You're working on a virtual copy. So having a look what we can do with that, let's lose the keywording and bring up, let's have a look, let's go into the develop with it and do different things with it. There we go. Let's make a few basic changes. So we'll make it black and white first and then change it slightly there so it's much punchier, much darker. Let's bring that in. And how does that work best? Yeah, that looks pretty decent. We now have a black and white. If I go back to the original though, and it's still there with the colour, I can make changes to that independently. But if I want a reference to keep looking back to it and thinking, what was the original like though? Then I can make another duplicate, another virtual copy. There is no limit on the number of virtual copies that I can make. So there we go. It is overexposed, so I'm going to take the exposure down a little bit. That brings back some colour, but I would like the highlights to be a little bit more punchy. So there we go. So I've got some changes there. Let's bring that back in, and should we warm it up a bit? There we go, nice green shades. And then to compare that with the original, there we go. So the colour is much improved on that virtual copy of it. Now, if I like the black and white, and more importantly, my client likes the black and white, but they're not sure, the shading of it, it's possibly a little bit too bright. I could go back to the original colour image and make another virtual copy, and then apply some different black and white settings to it. Or I can actually go straight to the virtual copy and make a virtual copy of the virtual copy. I know that sounds very meta, but all it's actually doing is duplicating the original, but giving me a starting point in terms of being black and white. So I'll create a virtual copy of that. This is now my 4th virtual copy. Well, it's my 3rd virtual copy and I have 4 elements of that image. There are 4 of them. And in here, I want to change that exposure. So darken that down a bit. And then maybe should we bring up the whites a bit? Oh no, it's starting to look posterized, isn't it? But you get the idea. You can make some, there we go. That's very high contrast, but there you go. So I started with this one and I've now got this one. Hang on, where's it gone? Bring it up. No, open it out. You can fold them up as you can see. There we go. And there is that one. So virtual copies. Now, the other thing that you may have heard of in terms of being a virtual is virtual collections. So I'm going to go into my library. And in here, I'm going to work on those Italy images because I know I've got some of those with all sorts of text in there. So I'm going to go in and look at these. Now, a virtual collection. Well, you can have collections in here. And you can have 3 different types of collections. If you go to add a collection, there is a standard collection, there is a smart collection, and there is a collection set. Now, a collection set is a group of collections, so I'm not interested in that. A collection is like an album that you would display your images in. You would use it to group your images. So if you think in terms of images you may have of a child growing up across 10 years, on your hard drive physically they may be stored by year, but you would like all of your best images of that child in one collection, and then you can put together a book about that child from those images. So that's a really good use for a collection. Now, a smart collection extends that concept slightly, and that's what we're going to create here. So we're going to create a new smart collection. Now, in here, I want to the difference between a collection and a smart collection is that in a collection, you manually add the images. So you add them, you take them away. A smart collection is going to do that automatically based on a criteria. So I want these images. These are images that need to be processed. So they're my processing images. And how I'm going to ask Lightroom to automate the process of creating this collection is by the metadata. So in there where it's saying ratings, I'm going to choose other metadata, and in there I'm going to choose keywords. Then I need to tell it, well, what keyword, and do I want it to contain this? Will it contain all of it, contain the words? Maybe it doesn't contain. Does it start with? I'm going to keep this very simple. It contains, and the word or keyword is to be processed. And make sure, if you're going to do this, that you've spelt it correctly, that you are consistent across the whole of Lightroom with it. But to be processed, because somewhere in here, I have some images that were indeed to be processed, and I can't remember which ones they were. So I'm going to hit create there. And you can see there they are. That didn't look like that originally. I've already fiddled with that one. But I now have a smart collection, and it has in it 4 images. And how it picked those images was in the keywords, it has a keyword of to be processed. So that's how it's working. So if I go back to my Italy images and I find one that wasn't in there, and that one wasn't in there, if I go to my keywords and I start to type to be processed, it comes up as a keyword I've already used. And as soon as I add that word, you will see as I go back to my processing, I now have 5 images to be processed. And that one is the 5th of those. Now, the other thing is, once I finish processing them, so I think I've overdone this one considerably already, if I go back to my keywords and just take away the to be processed, you can see it instantly is removed from this collection. So it's a really handy way of using a collection not as an album, manually choose images to go and live in there. It automatically does this for you in the background. So you can work through your images, keywording them, tagging them, doing everything that you want to do with them. And these smart collections that you've built in order to help your workflow will be building and working away in the background and helping you to do that. So a practical example for that would be, if I had created another one of these collections, because at the moment that's disappeared, that fish image that was very red has disappeared. And if I wanted to bring it back thinking, did I process that? Was it picked? I can't remember. At the moment, there's no indication of that at all. So what I'd have to do is go back into Italy, go and find the image and think, yes, I did process that. So a better way would be to do something like this. So I'm going to say that's to be processed. And that means when I go in my processing, there they all are. And what I'm going to do with this is make another collection. This might sound odd, but follow along. I'm going to create a new smart collection, and this time these are processed images. These are the ones that I've actually processed. And how I'm going to do that is go into the other metadata and go into keywords. There we go. And see that that contains, and now this time I've got to make a decision here of which one of these I use. I'm going to keep it very simple, and I'm going to have a keyword processed. So I will take away the to be and leave that at processed. And I'm going to create that collection. Now, at the moment, it's coming up and it's saying 5. Does anybody know why it's doing that? That wasn't clever of me, was it? That wasn't clever of me. What I'm going to do, it did that because the word processed is in there and I left it at contains. So I'm going to edit that. and I'm going to cheat and I'm just going to put done. That's a good way of working, isn't it? I'll change that to done and then they'll disappear. Okay, so in my processing, I have 5 images. This one is done. So I'm going to go in to my keywords and I'm going to put in my done keyword. There it is. And as soon as I've done that, if we look over here, my processing is 4 and my processed is set to 1. So now I don't have to go looking for those images. As soon as I finish my processing, add a keyword of done and it will go into the processed folder, and there it is. And if I do that again on another one, I really overdid that one. So go in there and my mouse is sticking. There we go, and put in done. Come back over here, you can see I've got 3 in the processing and 2 are done. So that's a way to use a feature you probably already know about, but in a way that automates Lightroom for you and automates your workflow for you. Now we really will have a look at those develop settings, which when people talk about automating Lightroom, this is the one thing I do hear. Oh, you mean presets. So I'm going to go into the develop module and you can see that that image, which is greatly overdone, already has some presets on it. Absolutely it does. Right, so I'll show you where the presets are and what we do about them. So over on the right, the left-hand side of your screen, you have a collection. In fact, you have several collections of presets. So if I just go in here and we turn the blue, you can see you can go through them, you can apply them and have a look what they all do. Now, those presets, those groups of presets ship, and you can't really get into those in terms of, oh, I'd like to add one to that collection, that folder. But you do have user presets at the bottom. So that pink tone that this image had before was done with a preset that I had created. I've also got one called Bad Preset, which was terrible. But there you go. I've got 2 presets in there. Now, what I'd quite like to do is add another preset here. So what I'm going to do with my history is, in fact, I could take that right back to when it was imported. There we go. That's what that image was like when I imported it. And I'm going to lose the history on that and start again with the image. Because what I'd like to do is make sort of maybe a blue one this time. I did pink last time, maybe blue this time. And how I started, I did actually start with a preset. I started with that infrared one, which I thought gave it quite an ethereal look to it. Quite bright, but very ethereal. And then what I did was I went in here to the split toning and I just started playing around with it and then altering the saturation on it. So let's take the saturation up and see if we can get a nice blue look to it. That's bordering on purple, isn't it? Let's take that down a little bit. Get a nice blue on it. There we go. So I've created a look that I'm happy with. Now, maybe something as odd looking as that is because I'm trying to get this image to match a website or something, and the overriding colour on the website is a blue colour. So there is my split toning, and I'm happy with the whole of that. And that's the point I want to make my preset, and it couldn't be easier. I go across to the presets on the left, the plus button. When I do that, I get this dialog box, and it looks intimidating, but it's really not. The first thing to do at the top is just create a name for it. So I'll call that blue tone, which will go nicely with my pink tone. Now I'm going to put that in the user presets folder, but if you want to organize yourself more and have multiple folders, you can do that. You can add folders, but you can see you can't choose those Lightroom folders to save this into. So coming out of there, there is that folder. And then it has put a tick everywhere that I have specified something in terms of the look and of that image. Now I can add extra bits to it, or I can take bits away, but I'm actually going to leave that because that's exactly what I want it to look like. And I'm going to hit create on there. And that's it. There is my preset that I have created down there, bang in the middle of my other 2. And it's very simple to apply that to other images. All I need to do is to choose another image and then hit my preset option. That's not the best look. And of course I can change between it as well. So if initially the website's going to have this pinky tone and then it's not, it's going to be blue, then it's a simple matter of changing the preset. Now, of course, you may have been on a long train journey and you may have been creating presets happily and then get back to your beautiful desktop computer and not have those presets available. Well, you are covered, because what you can do is right-click on any of those and elect to export them. So choosing export, and it toddles away. It's gone back to my applications folder. No, it's up to Lightroom, and I don't want to put them in the Lightroom one. I'm going to put them in my data folder there, and I will just save that as blue tone. And that creates a file that I can then import in any other version of Lightroom. And I would do that by right-clicking on the folder and just saying import, and then bringing it in. Now, you are not limited to your presets. You can get presets from anywhere. You will find thousands of presets on the web, absolutely thousands of them. A lot of them are free, but you can also, there's a sort of marketplace of presets as well, and you can buy presets. And some of them take the work incredibly far, not just putting a tone on like I've done. There's absolutely really detailed within those presets. The principle of the presets remains the same though, absolutely the same. So very simple to work with that and extend your copy of Lightroom. Now that is presets in the develop module, but you have what are presets in lots of other places. So I'm going to go and have a look. And I've actually set this up already, but I'm going to actually have a look at these as well. So extending what I've already extended in a way. What I'm going to do here is go back to my library module. One of the things that I do is use presets, but this time they are export presets. So what I'm going to do is to create an export preset. Because something that my copy of Lightroom will do, that yours out of the box won't do, is if I decide I want to work on this particular image, but I'd like to edit it in Photoshop, then you would be able to do that as long as you've got Photoshop. If you go up to Edit In, you will see Edit in Adobe Photoshop as an option. And if you click on that option, it will take that image out of Lightroom and to open it up into Photoshop. That's the very latest version of Photoshop there. And it takes a little bit of time because it's a DNG and it's quite big and it's taking it out. There we go. And you can do all of your work in there and then save it and it will take it back in to Lightroom. So that's one thing that you could do. But I also have Pixelmator. So I'm not going to save that. And I would like sometimes to edit these images in Pixelmator. Now, my version of Lightroom will let me do that. You will have noticed if I go to Edit In, I have Pixelmator as an option and I have Acorn as an option as well. And they do work. If I click on there, it will prompt me, do I want to edit a copy with it? And I do. I want the adjustments to go out with the image. And eventually it should take me out there. You're going to do that? Thinking about it. Thinking about it. There we go. So it's opened it up in Pixelmator. But how does that magic happen? Because it doesn't happen out of the box. But it's actually not difficult. It's just knowing where to set it up. Simple as that. Just where to set it up. But you'll notice that if I right click on one of these and I go to Edit In. Oh no, actually the option isn't there, is it? No, what I do to make that work is to go into Lightroom and go to the preferences. And in there I have options for external editing. It's the third tab at the top. And you can see what I've actually done here. The top settings are your default for editing in. So if you never want to edit in Photoshop, then you could change that. But it's this second option here that's the powerful one. I'm going to choose, I don't think I've actually got another image editing app, but I'm going to show you another trick with this as well. You'll notice the settings at the top. You can export into PSD format with a set colour space, with a bit depth and with a resolution. But what if I'd like to edit this in Photoshop, but as a TIFF? Sometimes I want to export it as a PSD, other times I want it to be a TIFF. Well, I can't really do that without coming in here and changing these settings. But what I can do is choose an application. So I'm starting from scratch. I'm going to choose an application. And it thinks I want Photoshop, but I actually want Photoshop 2014. So making sure I've got the right version of Photoshop because I have two installed. So opening up that second one, that's the right one there, and choosing that. Yeah, that I want to use it anyway. So absolutely want to use that. But this time not as a Photoshop file. I want to edit it as a TIFF. And I might want to change the compression or change the resolution. So let's take that out at 300. I've now created my own additional preset. So it would be Photoshop CC 2014, but edit as a TIFF. So if I go into here and I select to save the current settings as a new preset, it gives me untitled preset. So this one was Photoshop CC 2014 and edit as a TIFF. So there's my new preset, and I'm going to create that. And that is all there is to it. I've now added an extra export preset. The preferences down. Let's go back into here and do the same again. Edit in. And this time I've got my standard edit in, but I've also got here my edit in Photoshop CC 2014, but edit it as a TIFF rather than a PSD. And you can create as many of those as you want. So rather than taking it into maybe Pixelmator as a PSD or a TIFF and then make a conversion to a JPEG, you can have two settings in here for Pixelmator. One as a TIFF and one as a JPEG, and take out that extra step. It's all about automating Photoshop, automating Lightroom to work in the way that best suits you, because that's the way that will make the whole thing faster. Now you can also create what really are presets but aren't called presets for other elements in Lightroom. So let's head off to the slideshow section. And it's thinking about it again. There we go. So I've got my images set up, and I'm going to have a look at what I've already got, because this time, instead of them being presets, they are templates. Now, all you have here are exactly the same as presets. They're a recipe of settings, a collection of settings. Where are the settings from? Over on the right hand side in 6 groups for you. And they're quite extensive here. As you open all of these, you can be scrolling for days. There are very many options in there, more than can fit on this particular screen at the moment. So these are where the options are. I'm going to go through those in a second. But what you have over here, these are pre-configured settings. So if you want to crop to fill, there's the default one. You can show the EXIF metadata. These are templates for your slideshow, and you can create your own. So I'm going to start at the top here. We've got one with the name on. Yeah, that's not a bad place to start. So I'm going to start with this one, but make some changes. So I'm going to go into the options. I could choose to zoom to fill the frame, which looks quite nice, but then I can't see all of my Elaine Giles at the top, but I'll leave that set to zoom to frame. I will leave a border on it, but I'm going to up it slightly so it's more than a single pixel. So let's take that up to 4 pixels. You can choose to have a shadow or not, which on black doesn't make a difference. So the options. Then you've got layout options, whether you show the guides or not there. I'll leave that alone. Then you have the overlays option, and the first overlay you can see is the identity plate. And the identity plate is just the default. I've not done anything with that yet, and that isn't really how I would like it displayed. So if I click that tiny little drop down arrow there, I now have within what is going to be a template, a little preset, and the preset is identity plates. So let's go in here and have a look at that. It has actually got my name there. You can just about see it. Not the best colour to show it. And it's a set font. Well, I actually do use just a font, virtually as a logo, and that's Zepfino. So that is my particular font. Again, can't see it too well, but you will do. Within here, I can choose to save that as. So I'll just put there Elaine. I know which one it is, and OK to that. So I've now got an identity plate preset. I'm editing an identity plate there. I've just created a new one, and OK to that. And that has changed it. It's changed the font over here, and it's changed it up there in the top left-hand corner too. I can change the colour here if I want to. So if all my images were light coloured, I could change that to a dark colour. I can also change the opacity. Now I can put then lots of metadata on it. Do I want the rating stars, the text overlays and all of this? Most of those are turned on at the moment. I'm going to turn a lot of them off. There we go. So turned a lot of those off. And then let's have a look at the last few options. I can change the backdrop. So at the moment it's just black. But I could even use a background image if I wanted, and that works fantastically well for maps. If you've got smaller images on the page, you can use a background image and use it as a map. You won't see that too well because of the size of this, but if we go back and take the zoom off that, just so you can see a little bit more of it, if I take that blue image and add it as a background image, you can see the effect that you can get, and obviously you can change the opacity on that. Now that makes it look very, very dark, and you're probably thinking, but if you change the opacity, it would get lighter. It's all to do with the background colour that you choose. So if we take that up to white, that's probably what you were expecting. And you can do that with it too. So as I say, works brilliantly for a map. If I'm going to leave it like that, then I really need to revisit the overlays and override the colour so that my identity plate stands out. So I think I've made enough changes in there. If I then apply a different set of settings, then I'm going to lose my settings. And with slideshows in particular, you probably won't have more than half a dozen preferences for your slideshow. But you don't go and add this as a preset, you add it as a template. Very simple, just click the add button, and I'll have this one as, I'll put Italy on it because it's got the Italy background. And again, it's saving it to the user templates, but you can have as many folders as you need. You might choose to have different folders for different clients, and just create that. And now I have what is in essence a preset, but they call a template, and that will save you a ton of time. You can do exactly the same as I've done there in two other places. One is the print module. You'll see this one didn't ship with it. Oh no, they didn't have a pretty purple one, but they did have lots of Lightroom templates. So you can see we've got two settings here, Lightroom templates and user templates. And because this is the print module, you've got a lot of options for all different sizes of prints, whether you have the same image multiple times, whether you take it right up to the edge, all sorts on here. You've also got your contact sheets. So a lot of images, even more images on a contact sheet. You have that landscape. You've got all sorts of things in there. Again, all of that is controlled from the right-hand side. Your layout styles, image settings, all of these, and they are extensive. The first thing you need to decide is, do you want a single image or a contact sheet, or a picture package or a custom package? And depending on what you choose up there, you get lots of options. You can see all of these options appear straight away. So I'm going to keep that fairly simple with a single at the moment. I'm just going to change the colours of it. So in the image settings, do you want to rotate the image? Do you want to zoom it to fit? And that is making a slight difference. Do you want to repeat one image per page? So if you want multiple copies of an image, probably not that many to be honest, but usually you use that where you want to print it out and have the same image printed at different sizes but on the same piece of paper. You can also add a stroke border to that. Initially that is black, but if I set that to a colour, you will see that image, especially if I make it bigger. That goes on the inside there, so let's put that in. And then you've got layout options and guides and all sorts of other options. So I won't wait to do all of the options you've got in there, but I will come down and change the page colour. So at the moment that's set to white, and I will choose a sort of deepish blue colour. Oh dear, it's not looking great, is it? But the idea is that I show you just how extensible these templates are. And again, I could put an identity plate on that, and I can put watermarks on it and all other kinds of options. But the key thing is I've made lots of changes and I don't want to lose those changes. So in my template browser, I'm going to go back and hit that add button. There it is. I've got another untitled template. I'll call that Elaine's contact sheet. There we go. And save that to the user templates. Now, when I fold up the Lightroom templates, I have my contact sheet, the purple one. and I have Elaine's contact sheet, which is the blue one, and they are saved. The last place that I can do that with presets is to go, well, templates as they're called, is to go into the web module. And in here you have lots of options. Yes, that was the one I created. Don't worry, that doesn't ship with it. But you do have lots of templates that do ship with it. As you can see, extensive range of templates there. But choose a starting point that's nearly what you want. So something inoffensive like that, and then be offensive pretty much by making the changes to the colours and things like that. So we've got the background colour there, which is very pale, but if it was a wedding site I might want that to be pink. And then we've got, there's a text, let's try that one there, do that and make that worse, there we go. And everywhere else there's the cells as well, so let's make the cells a sort of pinker colour too, but not quite the same pink. Let's make that much paler. And there we go. So it's done. So I've made some changes, and again, it's literally just the same process. Just add that, and we'll call that wedding layout, and create. And now that will be available for all the images that I need, multiple clients. As I say, I would probably organise that by genre, or possibly by client if it was a dedicated job for one particular client. But we have seen lots of different ways to automate Lightroom, so let's have a quick wrap up of that. We started off with the keyboard shortcuts, which were from memory, G and E and L. Beware, L doesn't always work. But those keyboard shortcuts will keep your fingers on the keyboard where you can quickly work with Lightroom without having to move across. I mean, you might be working with a Wacom tablet or something. You don't want to constantly be going back and swapping your pen for a mouse and backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. So learn a few shortcut keys. You will thank me, you will. And I'll give you a link in the follow-up email to where you can find lots of shortcuts, even more than I covered tonight. The other things we looked at were consistent imports, keeping your library tidy and saving yourself a lot of time by importing using an import preset. Then there were presets, what are traditionally viewed as being presets, but there are lots of presets. We looked at import presets, metadata presets, keyword presets, the presets in the develop module. There was also the export presets where you could send things out to Photoshop and Pixelmator and Acorn. And then there were what's called, there were the virtual collections, which I used in a different way. I didn't use them as an album, I used them to set up a workflow. And the virtual copies, which keep your file system neat and tidy by using copies of the image that only exist in Lightroom. And then, of course, there was the slideshow, the print layout, and the web pages that all have presets of their own that are called templates. And all of that can be transferred between your different versions of Lightroom, and you can also acquire presets from other people and share your presets with other people too. So that's automating Lightroom. Next time we look at Lightroom, it will be about making the switch, moving from Aperture to Lightroom. So Apple have moved away from Aperture, and I know a lot of people are moving towards Lightroom, and it's not an easy business. So we'll actually be doing a migration live on the night, probably more than one, to show you how you can take as much meta information and images and changes to images from Aperture to Lightroom, and move your entire library if that's the way you're going. But before then, we're diverging. We're back next week. We're looking at Office 365 again. We've looked at it once, but Microsoft have made a lot of changes, for which read huge improvements. And there's great stuff coming for the Mac version very soon. So we'll be taking a look at how you can save a ton of money and get the best from the whole Microsoft Office 365 service, because it is more than software, it is more than Office 2011 for Mac. You've got 1 terabyte of cloud storage, there's the iPad apps, and a whole lot more. So things have moved on greatly since the last time we looked at it. So that will be next week. And then, last year we looked at a collection of vector applications, and Sketch was one of those. But Sketch has been updated, and if Sketch 2 was good, Sketch 3 is even better. I work with Sketch every single day. It is my number one tool to turn to when I need something that will scale. And I need to do that a lot of the time. Just to give you a quick, seeing as though you're all here and you're all here live, just to give you an idea when I say I work with it every day. We have recently redesigned the MacBytes website and the MacBytes Learning website, and Sketch was an integral part of that. The whole process took about 4 to 5 weeks, but the graphic work probably took about 3 weeks. And at the end of the process, I sat down and I thought, I seem to have done a lot of graphics. How many did I do? And when I counted up, there were 3,500 graphics needed for that website, and all of them went through Sketch. So I wouldn't like to live without it. And we'll be looking at that in 2 weeks on the 30th of October. And the week after, we're then going to look at another application that is a vector app. This time, though, it's brand new and it's called Affinity Designer. It is a completely new Mac app from Serif. Seems to have come out of nowhere, but I've never seen an app get such good reviews on the Mac App Store, certainly not a version 1. It is amazing. It has over 100 5-star reviews, which for a version 1 is just stunning. It's a great app, and we'll be looking at that one on the 6th of November. But just to remind you, I've been Elaine Giles, and you can find me all over the internet as Elaine Giles, but specifically my blog that I have actually updated as well. So you'll find that at elainegiles.co.uk. You can also find me on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google+, and YouTube, where you will find those other parts of this Lightroom 4-part journey. And you'll find me there as The Elaine Giles, so youtube.com/The Elaine Giles. Now, thank you for attending. We're going to head off into Q&A in Connect. But if you are with us on YouTube, thank you very much for being with us. If you do have some questions, you can contact me via my blog or put a comment under the video. And we will be back next week. We will also be back with Lightroom in a few weeks, and I hope to see you there for that last part. But until then, it's goodbye from me, and I will see you next time.